The grand assembly hall stretched endlessly, a gleaming sea of metal and light. Tiered seating climbed in wide arcs up the chamber walls, vanishing into the gloom above. Thousands of beings filled those seats, cellian in shape, movement, and presence. Some shimmered with iridescent scales that danced in the light. Others hovered in translucent chambers filled with swirling gas. A few resembled humans, but with too many limbs or eyes that blinked sideways. Elena Vasquez sat within the small, isolated section designated for humans. It felt dwarfed beside the larger blocks. She wore a plain black suit, her expression neutral, even as her pulse pounded. Around her, the other human envoys fidgeted. Everyone knew this gathering would turn against them, period. At the chamber's center, a towering crystalline figure emerged atop a pedestal glowing faintly blue. This was Speaker Veltharos, older than stars, harder than forged neutronite. Its voice echoed from everywhere at once, translated instantly into every tongue present. "We assemble now because there is a threat," it declared. "A single species undermines the laws that hold this galaxy together. A species that chooses defiance when others choose order. A species that rejects the harmony we've preserved." Alina didn't need to guess. It was always about humans now. A tall, willowy figure, rose skin of rippling silver, gaze unblinking. Ambassador Zeffler of the Hegemony. Their empire had sailed the stars for millions of years and believed themselves. "The architects of galactic order? Speaker Veltharos is correct," Zeffler said. His voice flowed like polished glass, smooth yet colder than vacuum. "The humans have violated our laws 3 times this cycle alone. They've constructed settlements on worlds under protection. They deny our patrols access to inspect military crafts. Worst of all, they abandoned peace talks with no warning or explanation." The chamber stirred. Lena caught fragments of alien murmurs, primitive, unstable, untrustworthy, period. The speaker's crystalline form rang with clarity, silencing the crowd. "Provide the evidence." A vast screen shimmered into view above them, displayed footage. Human starships gliding through restricted regions. Then new urban spires rising on disputed planets. Another clip showed Earth warships turning away Council inspection crews. Finally, a recording of human diplomats exiting negotiation halls mid-discussion. "These," Zeffler said grimly, "are not the acts of a mature civilization. We've shown restraint. We've extended guidance. We've offered paths for integration. Yet the humans reject every one. They claim exemption from our laws. They behave as if superiority is their birthright." Alina nearly smirked. Superior? Compared to this council? These species had technologies beyond Earth's comprehension. Starborn cities that folded across space and ours. Weapons that could fracture moons. Shields that withstood the breath of suns. By every measure, humanity was a child among ancients. And that, she realized, was the very issue. The council treated humans like infants, scolded when curious, restricted when ambitious. They imposed rules without consent, dictated where humans could live, how they could defend themselves, what rights they were allowed to exercise, and they expected gratitude in return. Period. Another delegate rose, a towering insectoid, creature with shimmering wings that rippled with every movement. "Perhaps the humans do not yet comprehend," it buzzed, voice crackling like static in bees. "Perhaps what they require is more time to learn what it means to be truly civilized." They've had 50 years, Seth Kohler replied flatly. 50 years since first contact. Other civilizations adapted in half that time. Either the humans are too foolish to understand, or too arrogant to comply. Alina felt her jaw tighten. Round her, she sensed the other human envoys bristle with restrained anger. But no one spoke. This was her responsibility, and they knew it. The speaker raised a crystalline limb. "The council has reached a decision. You present the humans with one final choice. Submit to full integration protocols, or face total severance from galactic society." Silence swept the hall. Full integration meant complete submission. Humans would be bound to every council statute, monitored in every colony. Ships would need clearance for any movement. Governments would require permission to act. Humanity's autonomy would vanish. Total severance meant isolation, no commerce, no access to shared spaceways, no link to the galactic network. Humanity would become a forgotten world, lost again to the stars. Lena scanned the chamber, noting the many alien stares. Some looked satisfied. Certain humans would yield. Others seemed anxious, fearing the isolation was excessive. A few simply looked intrigued, curious what humanity would choose. "Ambassador Vasquez," said the speaker, "you speak for your people. What is your decision?" Alina rose slowly. The silence was so complete she could hear her breath. She thought of everything that had led here. 50 years of trying to belong to a galactic community that never treated humans as equals. 50 years of concessions that somehow always benefited the older powers. 50 years of being told human values were inferior, their progress dangerous, their ways unacceptable. She remembered the human colonies thriving on planets others had dismissed. She remembered scientists achieving breakthroughs council experts had said were impossible. Engineers building ships with designs no one else could replicate. Maybe this exile wasn't the punishment they thought it was. Lena met the crystalline gaze of the speaker. Humanity's answer is no. The word hit the air like a weapon. Shock rippled across the chamber in a dozen languages. Some delegates leapt to their feet. Others hissed or shouted in disbelief. "No," the speaker echoed. "You reject both paths?" "We reject being given only bad choices," Alina said, her voice steady. "We reject surrendering our freedom or being cast out for daring to be different. We reject a council that believes it alone may define civilization." She turned and began walking toward the exit. Her delegation followed in silence. "You leave this chamber," Zeffler called after her. "There will be no future negotiations. The council will proceed without your consent." Alina paused at the doorway, looking back. Thousands of alien faces stared at her, stunned, offended. Bewildered, they had ruled the stars for eons. Never before had a species simply refused to play their game. "Then act," she said, "and so will we." The door closed behind the humans with a gentle hiss. The hall remained silent. In all the history of the Galactic Council, no species had ever just said no. What to do next? But they would figure it out. They always did. The Council had methods for difficult species. They would soon discover that humans had methods for difficult problems too. 3 days later, the vote was held. 847 civilizations raised their limbs, hands, claws, tendrils, whatever form they took, and agreed. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be cut off from galactic civilization. Zeffler watched the results with a gleaming smile. His silver form shone under the chamber lights. "I'll learn," he told his aide, a smaller version of himself trembling with nervous energy. "When their economy collapses, when their citizens begin starving, they'll come crawling back." The council wasted no time. Within hours, every human merchant ship in shared space received the same order: leave and do not return. Traders who had worked with aliens for decades found their contracts void, their goods rejected, period. Hyperspace corridors maintained. By ancient alien tech were updated. Human ships were erased from access lists. Any who tried to use them would be denied or destroyed. The communications web spanning light years began blocking all messages from human systems. The endless stream of contact between Earth and the stars suddenly, it stopped, as if someone had pulled the plug. The interstellar communication lines went dark all at once. Captain Sarah Chen was piloting the human freighter New Horizon when the isolation orders hit. For 5 years, she'd traded with the Zephyrian colonies, delivering rare minerals humans were uniquely efficient at extracting. The Zephyrians, peaceful, plant-like creatures, had always dealt fairly. But as Sarah approached the Zephyrian trade hub, the voice that came through her speakers was somber. "I'm sorry, Captain Chen. You're not permitted to dock. The Council has banned all interaction with human vessels. What about our agreement?" Sarah protested. Her cargo hold brimmed with titanium crystals vital to Zephyrian tech. "We've worked together for years. The contract is null." Sarah stared at the console, stunned. These were people friends she had shared meals and stories with. Now, they treated her like a threat, all because politicians had voted. Scenes like hers unfolded everywhere. Human envoys were removed from alien embassies. Human students at galactic academies were told to leave. Tourists found themselves stranded as alien transport services refused passage. The separation was swift. Almost overnight, humanity was cut off, no warning. No transition. Period. Back on Earth, President Martinez convened an emergency session of the Global Council. Representatives from every human colony gathered in Geneva's Great Chamber. Dozens of languages filled the air in worried tones. "Reports are coming in from the frontier," said Admiral Torres, commander of human space defense. "All major trade paths are blocked. Every relay's gone silent. We are completely isolated." "How long can we last like this?" asked Director Kim of the Mars Industrial Consortium. "Half our infrastructure depends on alien-supplied materials." President Martinez stood at the central dais, looking haggard but firm. "We existed for millennia without help from alien races," he said. "We can do it again. But our colonies need aid." Governor Walsh of the Centauri system argued. "Without alien medical systems, lives will be lost." "Then we'll have to build our own," Martinez replied. "We'll have to make everything ourselves, just as humanity always has." Dr. Elizabeth Stone, chief science advisor to Earth, raised her hand. "Actually, Mr. President, this might be an opportunity in disguise. We've spent decades adapting to alien norms. Maybe this will push us to innovate again." Some in the room frowned, skeptical. Others quietly considered her point. Period. Meanwhile, within council space, the member species waited for humanity to begin unraveling. Zephyr Kalor ordered his analysts to monitor human economic systems. He expected sharp declines in trade, plummeting industry, and a flood of desperate pleas for reinstatement. But the early data puzzled him. Trade with aliens had vanished, but intrahuman commerce was surging. Fleets moved continuously between Earth, Mars, Centauri, and dozens of other colonies. "Oh, they're just redistributing stockpiles," Seth Kohler told his aide. "Once that dries up, they'll have nothing left." But time passed. Collapse never came. Sensor data showed that human colonies weren't just stable, they were expanding. New factories, new cities, new ports. Productivity on every world was climbing. 1 year passed, then 2. The Thaler's certainty began to waver. How could a species thrive under total embargo? It defied all known logic. The Council believed it understood everything about galactic economics and technological growth. "Send a scout," Estelor ordered. "I want real data from human space." The scout ship was small and swift, designed for covert missions in hostile zones. It crossed into human territory near the outer edges of the Centauri system and immediately began collecting readings. What it discovered defied logic. The Centauri colonies had expanded by over 30% since the isolation began. New orbital platforms were under construction. Mining operations had pushed into previously ignored asteroid belts. Most alarming of all, humans appeared to be developing entirely new technologies. The scout ship's captain, an experienced alien, named Vector, observed sleek human vessels gliding through spaceships unlike any Council design. They were faster, more agile, and moved with patterns that hinted at unfamiliar propulsion methods. "This doesn't make sense," Vector muttered to his crew. "They've been cut off from Council tech databases. They can't trade for exotic materials. Where is this advancement coming from?" The science officer, being with dozens of multifaceted eyes able to scan wide spectrums, examined the data carefully. "Captain, I believe they're inventing it themselves. These aren't borrowed designs, they're original." A ripple of unease spread through Vector's scaled form. The Council's entire model of progress was based on cooperative knowledge sharing. No single race was meant to advance rapidly alone. It was supposed to be impossible. And yet, the humans appeared to be disproving it. The scout remained in human space for several more weeks. Every day brought something new. Human scientists were achieving breakthroughs in energy systems, advanced materials, and propulsion. Human engineers were constructing devices that Council researchers would have declared unfeasible. When Vector finally returned and submitted his findings, Estelor read the report 3 times before he accepted it. "They're not collapsing," he whispered. "They're evolving." His aide shifted uneasily. "Should we increase the pressure? Tighten the blockade further?" Zethkalar turned from his desk and looked out across the vast superstructure that housed the Galactic Council. For countless millennia, it had been the galaxy's throne. All important decisions originated there. All influential civilizations were represented except one. The humans weren't there. And yet they were thriving. "Maintain the blockade," he said softly. "They may still break. This might be temporary." But deep in his core, Zethkalar feared the truth. The Council hadn't crushed humanity by isolating them. They may have released them. 5 years into the Great Isolation, something no one predicted occurred. The humans vanished. It began with the outermost colonies. The Council's long-range sensor network, tasked with monitoring human space, began detecting anomalies. Mining outposts near Proxima Centauri stopped transmitting. Agricultural worlds around Kepler 440b ceased, sending daily status updates. One by one, human colonies simply went silent. At first, the Council attributed the loss of signal to technical issues. Space was unpredictable, and colonies sometimes suffered system failures. But when patrol vessels were dispatched to investigate, the findings defied explanation. The colonies were deserted. Captain Tessara, commanding the Council patrol vessel Vigilant Harmony, was the first to land on one of the abandoned human worlds. A seasoned officer from the Altarian Republic renowned for their precision and logic, Etera had witnessed many oddities in her 40 years of duty. But nothing prepared her for what she saw. The human colony on New Geneva had been home to 50,000 inhabitants. Its orbital installations could house 20,000 more. Yet when her ship arrived, scanners detected 0 life signs. Take us to the surface," she commanded. "Main settlement." Her crew complied. "I want to see this myself." The shuttle descended and touched down in New Geneva City's Central Plaza. Tessara emerged in full environmental gear, despite readings confirming the atmosphere remained breathable. Her team followed, weapons drawn, prepared for anything. The city was pristine. Towers stood unscathed. Streets were immaculate. Ground. Vehicles rested in perfect alignment. Gardens overflowed with thriving earth flora. It was all in place except for the people. Captain called her security chief, a towering insectoid named Jicht. "You need to see this," he led her to the colony's starport. The landing pads were deserted, but the evidence of recent use was unmistakable. Scorch marks from departing ships still shimmered. Cargo crates sat in ordered rows. It looked as if people had been preparing to leave calmly, not in panic. Tessara opened one of the containers. Inside were personal effects clothing, photos, mementos from Earth, treasured human things. The colonists had been preparing to go, but deliberately not fleeing danger. "Captain," her science officer chimed in, "we're detecting active power signatures from the residential sectors. Buildings still have energy. Refrigeration and life support are running. The homes are empty." They searched for hours. Every room, every building, every depot. They found beds still warm, meals uneaten, half-finished on dining tables. They found children's toys scattered on floors, but no people, living or dead. Stranger still, there were no signs of violence. No evidence of weapons discharged, no forced doors, no panic. It was as if 50,000 humans had calmly decided to walk away, taking only what mattered most. The same reports came in from every human colony the Council inspected. The mighty shipyards orbiting Titan were empty but untouched. Research outposts in the Vega system were deserted, yet carefully powered down. The massive orbital cities near Jupiter showed no signs of damage, only traces of deliberate, orderly evacuation. At Council headquarters, emergency sessions were held daily. The central chamber buzzed with nervous speculation. Hundreds of species gathered, trying to make sense of the impossible. Entire civilizations do not vanish. Boomed Speaker Veltheros, his crystalline voice ringing with disbelief. Populations in the billions do not simply disappear without leaving wreckage behind. Ambassador Zeckler paced, his metallic skin dulled with stress. There must be a cosm, biological catastrophe, or a hidden enemy we were unaware of, something that forced them to flee or killed them en masse. But every explanation fell short. A disease would leave bodies, a natural disaster would leave destruction, an attack would leave signs of battle. The human settlements showed. None of these cathedioses, an ancient being whose species had survived a galactic collapse, raised a tentacle. Perhaps, she said slowly, we are asking the wrong question. Perhaps the humans left of their own free will. The chamber erupted in immediate outrage. Impossible, shouted Zathalar. Where would they go? How? And how could they relocate? Entire planetary populations without being noticed. The scale of such a migration would be astronomically detectable. Kaveda remained composed. We've made many assumptions about human limits. 5 years ago, we believed that isolation would destroy them. Instead, it allowed them to thrive. Perhaps we have underestimated them again. Dr. Nexus, the Council's chief science advisor, activated his analysis protocols. His synthetic body emitted a low hum as vast data streams processed through him. The evidence points to a coordinated evacuation, he announced, over a period of 6 standard months. The most recent human world went dark only 3 weeks ago. This was not a sudden event. Then who orchestrated it? Speaker Veltheros demanded. And how did we fail to observe such immense fleet movements? Perhaps they built vessels. We could not detect, offered Ambassador Yithrin. Their isolation years were spent developing new sciences. Or, whispered Kafida, perhaps they discovered a form of travel we do not yet understand. The Council dispatched its finest explorers to human space. Every inspection returned the same baffling results. Empty colonies, no destruction, complete methodical departures. But not a single clue as to where the humans had gone. That changed. When investigators uncovered peculiar devices left behind in public places, government halls, cultural centers, small, inert machines designed to activate only in the presence of alien life. The first was found in the remains of Earth's United Nations building. When Ambassador Zeeskler's team approached, it activated. A shimmering hologram emerged. It was Elena Vasquez, the human envoy, who had walked out of the council 5 years earlier. She appeared older now, silver streaks in her hair, but her posture was firm. Her voice steady. If you're seeing this, she said, then you've realized what we've done. Humanity has left this galaxy, not in fear, not in defiance, but in hope and in strength. The room went still. For 5 years, you isolated us. You thought removing your alliances, your markets, your networks would break us. You were wrong. Isolation gave us something more valuable than trade. Gave us space to dream, to imagine, to build. Scalaire stared, wordless. Behind him, his delegation whispered, translated, analyzed. You will ask how we did this, Vasquez continued. How we relocated billions without your knowledge. How we surpassed your technological thresholds. The answer is simple. While you spent millennia refining the same tools, we broke the mold. We chose to stop trying to catch up to your standards and started inventing new ones. The image shimmered, but her eyes stayed locked on the viewer. You won't find us. You won't follow us. Not because we hate you, but because we no longer need your permission to exist. Humanity has outgrown this place. The message ended. Silence returned to the council chamber like a vacuum. No one moved. No one spoke. Humanity was gone, them to prevent long-term damage. Environmental controls were left running to preserve ecosystems. It's as if they cared about the worlds they were leaving behind, not as an afterthought, but as a legacy. Voice carried a hint of awe as she continued. There are no signs of panic. No urgency. This wasn't an escape. It was a farewell. Other teams returned similar findings. On Mars, the great domed cities were pristine. automated maintenance systems still active, gardens blooming under protective glass. On Luna, human research outposts bore signs of last-minute experiments halted mid-no debt, every sample cataloged, every result logged. Humanity had not fled. They had finished. In the orbit of Saturn, the Council found something even stranger, massive construction facility hidden inside the rings. It had been deactivated, but it bore unmistakable signs of having produced a new kind of vessel sleek, silent, and nothing like the bulky colony ships the Council had once tracked. One hangar still held the scorched imprint of where such a ship had once sat, the fusion residue indicating it had launched no more than a month before the last colony went silent. Dr. Nexus himself visited the site. He floated through the silent station, his sensors humming in the vacuum. "These ships," he declared, "were not designed for normal FTL. Their whole composition suggests exotic matter stabilization. And there are traces of quantum fold emissions. It's not theoretical anymore. This is post-relativistic engineering." Goran frowned. In plain terms, they didn't just go faster. They broke the paradigm. They left this galaxy the same way. We step across a room. The shockwave of that realization spread quickly. Council species had spent eons refining known physics. But in 5 short years, humanity had rewritten the rules not by perfecting old knowledge, but by daring to imagine what others deemed impossible. Some refused to believe it. Conspiracy theories spread, claims that humanity had found alien help, that they'd discovered ancient precursor technology, that it was all a trick. But none of the evidence supported these theories. The Council's best minds finally reached a conclusion: humanity had done it themselves, with no aid, with no oversight, alone. In the months that followed, Council fleets began retreating from human space. Not because of danger, but because of what lingered. A feeling of absence so profound it echoed in every silent city. Every untouched meal, every child's drawing left on a wall. It was as if the galaxy itself grieved their departure. And then, one final message arrived. It did not come from a beacon or a recorder. It came from the edge of Council spacean, unknown signal piggybacking on ancient subspace frequencies thought long abandoned. It was short, a single line, delivered in every known language. "Don't follow. You're not ready."
That was
the last anyone heard from humanity. The stars they left behind were quieter now. The Council's might remained. Their order persisted. But something vital had changed. The galaxy had lost its wild card, its unpredictable variable, its spark of chaos and creativity. And somewhere beyond the veil of known space, a billion humans walked under alien suns, rewriting destiny in a language the Council never thought to learn. Freedom, asked ChatGPT. They have been waiting for new minds to emerge, but they only extend the invitation to those who prove they can break free from inherited thinking. Dr. Yalith froze the projection, her thoughts racing. "Admiral, if this is real, then humanity didn't just vanish, they ascended." The feed resumed. Alina displayed flashes of the civilizations humanity had encountered, densities of light that had discarded matter entirely, machine consciousnesses layered across dimensions, organic minds fused with synthetic structures, forming new states of being. These civilizations, Alina explained, have watched the Milky Way for epochs. They've witnessed species bloom and decay, kingdoms that endure for millions of years, others that collapse before they mature. And through it all, they've learned only those capable of shedding old paradigms are ready for the next chapter of existence. The screen shifted to reveal a chamber unlike anything ever catalogued, flickered between dimensions, echoing with shapes and presences beyond three-dimensional comprehension. "The requirement is elegant," Alina said calmly. "A species must transcend its dependence on centralized control. It must flourish through its own internal momentum. It must desire knowledge and liberty more than structure or comfort." Admiral Corrin's frills rippled with unease. The implications were dawning. "The Council," Alina went on, "stands as a monument to what these civilizations have left behind. It is rule by consensus, innovation slowed by caution, discovery postponed by fear. They watched us resist that. They saw our refusal to conform, So they waited. Clips followed human colonies in distant galaxies. Architectures that hovered midair, forms like people yet radiant with unknown energies. Children played with artifacts that denied every known law. When you cut us off, you did something. Incredible, Alina said. Her smile held warmth and melancholy. You released us from the burden of assimilation. We were no longer obligated to prove ourselves to a system never built to welcome us, so we redefined the terms. It then came. The final vision, armadas unlike any fleet ever imagined. Colossal ships glided silently, each a moving city, warping the fabric of space around them. Propulsion was no longer mechanical, it was existential. Humanity departs not in defeat, but in graduation, Alina concluded, we've been welcomed into a family of civilizations that spans dimensions and galaxies alike. We leave not in bitterness, but in anticipation for who we might yet become. Coordinates flickered across the end of the broadcast, not to places in known space, but to observation points, distant stations where curious minds might glimpse signs of transit. Across the unimaginable, Dr. Yalith and Admiral Corrin spent sleepless cycles verifying the data. What they uncovered shattered centuries of doctrine. The regions near the coordinates bore unmistakable scars of higher dimensional manipulation. Spatial anomalies, energy trails, quantum disruptions, all signs pointed to the same conclusion. These weren't theoretical gateways. They had been opened. They had been used. When Admiral Corrin's findings reached Council Command, the impact rippled instantly. Institutions built over eons wavered under the weight of the revelation. Within days, the old galactic order began to buckle air, tools, drones, entire structures that had never existed before, now growing like living organisms, adapting and reconfiguring as if guided by some alien intelligence. Except it wasn't alien, just not the kind of humanity the Council had known. Dr. Yalith's latest report shook Council to its core. These machines aren't just following a script. They're responding to us, studying us, testing us. Team from the Osean Cooperative tried to deactivate a reawakening facility. Their entire ship was disabled within minutes, not destroyed, just shut down. When reinforcements arrived, they found the original team unharmed and ... changed. They spoke of visions, of insights into technologies so advanced they bordered on magic. Some of them refused to return. Others began building replicas of what they had seen. The Council's older members panicked. Speaker Valtheros called for a full quarantine of all former human territories. We cannot allow this infection of unproven progress to spread, he warned. This is how civilizations fall through uncontrolled evolution. But it was already too late. Dozens of younger species ignored the order, sending scientists, students, even pilgrims to Earth and Mars, to the floating cities and glowing monoliths of human design. What they found changed them, and they changed others. Quiet revolution began. Universities restructured their entire education systems overnight. Civilian ships altered their propulsion models using techniques inspired by human transdimensional theories. Children began learning the mathematics of fifth-dimensional topology. Entire civilizations stopped looking to the Council for guidance, and instead to the empty but awakening worlds of humanity. One message, discovered in a forgotten lab beneath the lunar surface, summed it up best. This is not a farewell. It is an invitation. When you're ready, the gates will open. Humanity hadn't just left behind cities and machines. They had left behind a challenge, test, not of strength or obedience, but of imagination. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Understand what lies beyond. The chamber buzzed with unease as Catheta's words struck at the heart of the Council's greatest fear, irrelevance. Speaker Valtheros called for order, but his voice, once revered, no longer held the same command. Too many species had seen the machines. Too many had begun asking questions the Council could no longer answer. Admiral Corrin quietly requested a full analysis of the Nexus Collective's technology. What he received shook even his hardened resolve. The communication protocols used by the collective bypassed council encryption standards as if they were child's locks. Their data packets held recursive structures, messages within messages, that suggested intelligence operating on levels still incomprehensible to council scientists. And yet it had all started with humanity. On dozens of former human worlds, the dimensional network pulsed with renewed vigor. Glowing gates appeared, some floating in orbit, others embedded in ancient ruins. They didn't lead to human outposts or known installations. They led somewhere else, somewhere farther. Some daring crews entered. A few returned, bearing strange symbols etched into their ships, their crews speaking of vast stations between galaxies and cities where time flowed differently. They claimed to have seen not just humans, but dozens of new species, many of whom had never heard of the Council. The divide within the Council deepened. Some saw this as an existential threat, a loss of control. Others, especially those from younger species, saw it as the beginning of something greater. Dr. Yolith was among the few allowed to speak freely to both sides. Her words were simple. We drove humanity away, not because they were dangerous, but because they made us feel small. Now we must decide, do we stay small or do we grow? In the following weeks, thousands of petitions poured in from independent worlds, research colonies, and civilian alliances. They wanted access to the Nexus link. Some didn't ask for permission. They just left. And the Nexus responded. I knew. Messages began arriving not just from Andromeda, but from galaxies the Council had no names for. Each one echoed a similar sentiment. There is more. There has always been more. The ones you exiled opened the door. Now you must choose whether to follow. The Council, once the center of galactic order, found itself no longer feared, no longer followed, and no longer alone. The era of local rule was ending. The age of intergalactic civilization had begun. And it was humanity who lit the way. Ask ChatGPT. Despite the tensions, one truth had become undeniable. Humanity's disappearance had reshaped the galaxy without firing a single shot. The dimensional network pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the ruins of abandoned Earth cities. Machines once thought dormant began to activate in synchrony, broadcasting maps, coordinates, and what could only be called invitations. Across the stars, lights flickered and long-forgotten satellites and automated ships redirected their courses. The message was simple and profound. You are not alone. You never were. Dr. Yeleth stood in the remains of a human research facility on Europa, watching as holographic projections danced above ancient consoles. They displayed images of galaxies far beyond the local group, civilizations in harmony without centralized control, and human ambassadors not as conquerors or victims but as bridges. She turned to her team. This isn't abandonment. It's evolution.
Oh.
Meanwhile, the 17 breakaways, species calling themselves. The free orbits began establishing their own embassies in the dimensional network. The Nexus Collective welcomed them, cautiously assigning mentors, translators, and resource packets tailored to each civilization's psychological and cultural profile. This level of preparation spoke volumes. Humanity had clearly been planning this for years, long before their final message was broadcast. In council chambers, Speaker Valtheros grew more isolated. Each session felt like a countdown. Even the most loyal allies began hedging their loyalties, secretly studying the dimensional gate protocols and sending unofficial envoys through exploratory portals. Thaler, once proud and resolute, now looked weary. They didn't rebel, he whispered. To Valtheros. They just outgrew us. The reformers, led by Katha, pushed forward with sweeping proposals, shared governance models, voluntary treaty systems, rebuilding trust through decentralized cooperation. The ideas had once been dismissed as naive, and now they were gaining momentum. Even among the old guard, cracks had formed. Many admitted privately that the Council's isolationist stance had stifled innovation, driven away their brightest minds, and created a system more obsessed with control than unity. Back on the fringe of Andromeda, human vessel watched as a Council exploration ship arrived through a dimensional gate for the first time under peaceful terms. The human captain sent a simple message. Took you long enough? the galaxy, would never be the same again. What began as an exile had become a revolution. And as more species stepped into the vast unknown, guided by the freedom humans had embraced, one reality became clear. The future no longer belonged to the Council. It belonged to those brave enough to imagine something greater, asked ChatGPT.